Hello, my wonderfully drowsy time travelers, my fellow lovers of slow-moving history and stories that melt your mind into dreams. Before we begin our journey to the distant past, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If these sleepy stories help you drift off, consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us create more content to lull restless minds to sleep. And if you're feeling extra cozy, leave us a comment about how long you lasted before dozing off. We love reading your experiences. Now, find your most comfortable position, let your eyelids grow heavy, and allow my voice to guide you into relaxation. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, untouched wilderness. The air is cool and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As you take your first step forward, feel the soft soil beneath your bare feet. Notice how your breathing begins to sync with the gentle rhythm of your footsteps. And out. And out. With each exhale, let go of the day's tensions. Just as Stone Age travelers left no burdens behind on their journeys, the twilight sky above you blushes with the last colors of sunset as we begin our time-traveling walk. Your eyes grow heavier now, blinking slower, until they stay comfortably closed. The sounds of the modern world fade away, replaced by the whisper of wind through ancient trees and the distant call of birds settling for the night. Now imagine, as you walk, that you're joining a small group of early humans moving across the landscape. Their steps are unhurried but purposeful, their movements fluid like the streams they follow. You blend seamlessly into their rhythm, your modern worries dissolving with each passing minute. The moonlight begins to silver the open plains ahead, creating a soft, dreamlike glow that makes everything seem just a little bit unreal, a little bit magical, and very, very peaceful. Listen to the quiet sound of grass brushing against legs as the group moves forward. Notice how the night air feels cool against your skin, but not uncomfortable, just enough to remind you that you're alive here, in this moment between waking and sleeping. The stars above wink lazily, their light filtered through your nearly closed eyelids as you continue walking, deeper into relaxation, deeper into sleep. Your breathing slows to match the pace of our ancient companions, in and out, in and out, each step carrying you further from wakefulness, closer to rest. The rhythm of movement becomes the rhythm of sleep, steady and natural as the turning of the earth. And as we prepare to explore how these early travelers navigated their world, you find yourself already halfway to dreaming, floating gently on the current of this sleepy story. Ready to drift, ready to rest, ready to sleep. The night wraps around you like a soft animal skin as we continue walking with our ancient companions. Your feet know the way now, moving without thought across the gentle slopes of a land untouched by roads or fences. The moonlight paints everything in shades of silver and shadow, turning ordinary stones into mysterious markers, familiar trees into silent sentinels of the past. This is how they traveled, not by maps, but by memory woven into the very landscape itself. Imagine waking with the first light of dawn, your breath making small clouds in the crisp morning air. There are no alarms here, no rush, just the gradual brightening of the world telling you it's time to move. The group stirs around you, shaking off sleep as easily as deer rising from their resting places. Someone checks the wind direction by tossing a handful of dry grass into the air, watching the strands dance and fall. This simple act holds more meaning than you first realize. The wind carries scents, and scents tell stories. The faint tang of salt might mean the sea is near. The musk of wet fur could signal a herd passing not long ago. Every breath is information. As we walk, notice how the leader occasionally pauses to study the ground. What looks like random dirt to modern eyes is actually a complex language written in footprints and bent blades of grass. A patch of flattened vegetation here shows where rabbits slept last night. The faint indentation of a hoofprint there, still holding a drop of morning dew in its curve, tells of deer moving toward the river. The travelers don't just see these signs, they feel them in their bones, the way you might instinctively know which stair in your house creaks without looking. The sun climbs higher, warming your back as we enter a forest where the trees grow wide enough that 3 people could link arms around their trunks. The air changes here, cooler, heavier with the scent of mushrooms and rich, decaying leaves. One of the older travelers places a hand against a particularly massive oak, feeling the texture of its bark. You watch as their fingers trace almost invisible marks, cut into the tree's skin not by tools, but by generations of bears sharpening their claws in the same exact spot. This is how they mark their calendars, not with numbers but with nature's recurring patterns. The bears return when certain nuts ripen. The nuts fall when the days grow short. The short days mean it's time to move to winter grounds. Everything is connected in this endless, unspoken guidebook. Around midday, we come upon a stream cutting the forest like a liquid ribbon. The group doesn't consult any devices to decide which way to follow it. They simply kneel and watch the water's movement. Leaves floating on the surface reveal the current's subtle eddies and flows. A child points to where the water swirls around a half-submerged log, creating a calm pool perfect for drinking. This is their science observation refined over countless lifetimes. They know which water is safe by the way it moves over stones, which plants grow nearby as natural filters, where to find the sweetest water by watching where birds land to drink. As afternoon fades toward evening, the terrain begins to change. The ground slopes upward in gentle waves, and the trees thin out to reveal rolling hills beyond. Someone near the front of the group makes a soft clicking sound, and everyone pauses. They've spotted something on the horizon, not danger, but opportunity. A distant line of moving shapes so small they look like pebbles rolling across the land. Buffalo. Or maybe reindeer. From this far, it's impossible to tell, but the direction of their movement is what matters. The animals walk with purpose, which means they're heading somewhere worth following, toward fresh grazing land, toward water, toward the things that will sustain our group too. Without a single word being spoken, the path is chosen. We'll parallel the herd's movement, close enough to benefit from their knowledge of the land, but far enough to avoid disturbing them. Now night begins to fall again, and with it comes a different kind of navigation. As the last light fades, the travelers look not to the ground but to the sky. The first stars appear like pinpricks in a dark hide, and you watch as certain individuals study them with quiet intensity. They're not tracking constellations as we know them today, but rather remembering how certain stars appear over familiar landmarks when viewed from specific valleys or hills. That bright one there hangs directly above the winter camp when seen from the high rocks. That cluster there lines up with the river bend when you stand near the old lightning-struck pine. It's a celestial map written in memories passed down through generations, each star a glowing waypoint in the endless dark. As we prepare to sleep under these same ancient stars, consider how every step taken today was part of an unbroken chain stretching back to the first humans who dared to explore beyond their immediate surroundings. Their navigation wasn't about conquering the landscape, but about listening to it, about moving with the same natural rhythms as the animals they followed and the seasons they chased. There were no grand expeditions, only the slow accumulation of knowledge written in footprints and starlight, in the taste of the wind and the stories whispered by the land itself. The fire burns low now, its embers pulsing like a sleepy heartbeat. The last thing you notice before drifting off is how the night sounds the distant call of an owl. The rustle of some small creature in the underbrush don't feel like disturbances, but rather like the land breathing around you. And as sleep finally takes you, your dreams fill with unmarked paths and star-guided footsteps, with the quiet certainty that even without maps or compasses, you'll always find your way home. Dawn breaks like a yoke over the horizon, spilling golden light across the dew-kissed grass where we slept. You wake not to alarms, but to the gentle lapping sound of the nearby river, our constant companion that will guide today's journey. As you stretch sleep from your limbs, notice how the morning mist curls above the water's surface like smoke from an invisible fire. This river isn't just water, it's a living map, a storyteller, the original highway stretching endlessly in both directions. Our ancestors knew this truth in their bones. To follow water is to follow life itself. The group moves with quiet purpose toward the riverbank, where the overnight moisture has drawn out earthworms that squirm in the damp soil. Fingers pluck them up effortlessly, breakfast gathered without breaking stride. As we begin walking alongside the flowing water, observe how the travelers constantly monitor its character. The river speaks in a language of ripples and currents. A slight change in its song might reveal tributaries ahead or warn of dangerous rapids. One of the elders pauses to skim a flat stone across the surface, watching how it dances. This isn't play, it's testing the water's mood, much like you might test bath water with your elbow. Mid-morning brings us to a place where the river widens, its banks stretching apart like arms opening for an embrace. The water here moves slower, drowsier, carrying leaves that spin lazily on its surface. Without discussion, the group begins gathering fallen logs and binding them with tough, flexible vines. You watch as they construct simple rafts not for crossing, but for floating supplies downstream. Their hands work with the quiet confidence of those who've done this countless times before, tying knots that hold just tight enough, selecting wood that's buoyant but not brittle. As the rafts take shape, you realize this is how they conserve energy, letting the river's steady current do the work of carrying burdens. The afternoon sun beats down as we enter a stretch where the river narrows, its banks rising into steep walls of layered stone. Here, the water grows restless, chattering over rocks in a language of splashes and gurgles. The traveler's pace slows as they read these liquid messages. A particular pattern of white foam clinging to certain boulders marks hidden dangers beneath the surface. A swirling eddy near the far bank indicates a deep pool, where fish might gather. Every ripple is punctuation in the river's ongoing story, and our companions read it as easily as you might read a familiar book. As evening approaches, the river makes a sudden turn eastward, but our group doesn't follow. Instead, they pause at a barely noticeable game trail leading away from the water. At first glance, there's nothing remarkable about this spot, just another animal path winding into the trees. But then you notice the subtle signs, a series of notches carved into several tree trunks at shoulder height, each weathered by seasons but still visible. These aren't random marks, they're a message left by previous travelers, indicating good hunting grounds lie 2 days, walk in this direction. The oldest member of the group runs their fingers over the markings, feeling the story they tell in their depth and weathering. After a quiet exchange of glances, the decision is made to leave the river's guidance and follow this ancestral trail inland. Night finds us camped in a small clearing where the trees form a natural shelter. As the fire crackles, listen closely to the sounds around us. The river's voice still carries faintly through the darkness, now joined by the calls of night creatures. Someone begins tapping 2 stones together in a slow, rhythmic pattern that mimics the water's cadence. Others join in with sticks or their own collected stones until the night air thrums with this improvised symphony. This isn't just music, it's memory made physical. An auditory map that could help retrace steps tomorrow even if the trail disappears. The rhythms sync with landmarks in their minds. 3 quick taps for the place where 3 birches grow close together. A long pause for the wide meadow, a staccato burst for the rocky outcropping shaped like a sleeping bear. Lying beneath the stars once more, you realize these people didn't conquer distances through brute force or speed, but through deep conversation with the land. They didn't simply move across the earth, they moved with it, learning its rhythms until they became rhythms themselves. The river wasn't just a path, but a teacher whose lessons flowed endlessly toward some distant sea. And as sleep pulls you under, you dream not of rushing toward destinations, but of moving with that same fluid grace. Each step part of an ancient dance written in currents and carried on the wind. A pale lavender dawn finds us rising from sleep, our breath visible in the crisp morning air as we prepare to leave the river's embrace. The game trail we followed last night now stretches before us like a thread unraveling across the landscape. As we begin walking, notice how the light changes as it filters through different trees. The dappled patterns are more than just pretty. They're nature's road signs. Birch groves mean softer ground and edible mushrooms. Pine stands suggest shelter from wind and resin for torches. Our ancestors didn't need street names when every plant community told them what to expect. The morning passes in quiet rhythm, feet finding their own way across the uneven ground. Around midday, the trail leads us to an astonishing sight, a massive boulder balanced precariously on a hilltop, its shadow stretching across the grass like a sundial's hand. The group reacts with quiet reverence, circling the stone as if greeting an old friend. Run your fingers along its weather-worn surface and feel the shallow grooves carved by countless hands over generations. These aren't random scratches but a guestbook of sorts, left by travelers who came this way before. Some marks indicate good hunting seasons, others warn of drought years. The oldest grooves have nearly faded away, their messages lost to time, but the newer ones tell stories as clearly as words on a page. A deep vertical line with smaller horizontal marks might represent how many days walked to fresh water. A series of concentric circles could indicate a permanent settlement in that direction. This boulder isn't just a rock, it's a library, a bulletin board, a historical record all in one. As afternoon shadows lengthen, we encounter something remarkable, a series of small cairns balancing stones atop one another at irregular intervals. At first glance, they appear random, but look closer. The number of stones in each pile corresponds to something significant. 4 stones means good berry patches nearby. 7 warns of predators in the area. Some cairns lean slightly in particular directions, pointing toward water sources or sheltered valleys. The tallest stand at trail junctions like silent traffic directors. These fragile monuments represent an unbroken chain of communication, stretching back further than memory, each traveler adding their small contribution to the collective knowledge. You watch as one of our companions pauses to adjust a toppling stone before adding a smooth pebble of their own to the top, participating in this ancient conversation that predates writing. Dusk finds us atop a high ridge where the view stretches endlessly in every direction. As the sun dips below the horizon, notice how certain rock formations catch the dying light in specific ways. That jagged outcrop to the west glows red only at this time of year, signaling when certain roots are most nutritious. The flat stone table to the east reflects moonlight in summer but stays dark in winter, a natural seasonal calendar. Our ancestors didn't invent navigation, they simply learned to read the language the earth had been speaking all along. The group spreads out along the ridge, each person absorbing different details. One studies how shadows fall across distant valleys, another notes which birds are flying where, a third sniffs the wind for hints of coming weather changes. All this information will be shared later by the fire, woven together into a living map more detailed than any parchment could hold. Night falls completely now, but the landscape continues, speaking to those who know how to listen. The temperature difference between tree-lined hollows and open spaces creates subtle breezes that carry distinct scents. Different insects chirp at different elevations, creating an auditory topographical map. Even the stars seem to align with particular landforms when viewed from certain vantage points. As we settle around the fire, watch how the travelers occasionally toss handfuls of dry leaves into the flames. Each type of leaf burns with a unique color and intensity, creating brief flashes of blue or green or gold. This isn't just idle play, but another form of wayfinding memory. Certain leaves only grow near important landmarks, and their burning properties help commit those locations to memory. Lying back to gaze at the star-strewn sky, you realize these people carried maps not in their packs, but in their minds and muscles. Every step we took today was guided by generations of accumulated wisdom, written not on paper, but in the very fabric of the land itself. The balanced stones, the marked trees, the light patterns on rocks, these were their street signs and guidebooks. And as sleep comes to claim you, you find yourself dreaming in this ancient language, where wind directions feel like sentences and rock formations speak in paragraphs, where the whole earth pulses with stories waiting to be read by anyone willing to pay attention. The first light of dawn finds us breaking camp in a valley thick with mist that swirls around our ankles like living smoke. Today's journey will take us through country none of our group has traversed before, unfamiliar territory, where the usual landmarks hold no meaning. Yet there's no hesitation as we set out, because true navigation lives deeper than mere recognition. It pulses in the rhythm of our footsteps, in the angle of shadows across our path, in the way morning birdsong changes as we move from woodland to open plain. This is wayfinding at its most essential, not following set routes, but dancing with the land's endless variations. As we walk, observe how the oldest member of our group moves, slightly differently from the rest. Their head tilts at subtle angles, nostrils flaring occasionally to sample the air. Their feet seem to find purchase on invisible paths, avoiding patches of loose gravel before they're even visible. This is pathfinding distilled through decades of lived experience. What began as conscious observation in youth has become unconscious competence in age. They navigate the way you might walk through your own home in total darkness, every turn an obstacle mapped into muscle memory. Watch how they occasionally run fingertips along rock faces as we pass. Not for balance, but to read the stone's story through its texture, the smoothness that speaks of ancient water flow, the rough patches that signal good tool-making material, the faint traces of lichen that indicate reliable north-facing surfaces. Midday brings us to a landscape transformed by recent rains. What was once a gentle stream it now churns with muddy runoff, its banks reshaped overnight. The group pauses, not in confusion but in quiet assessment. Someone picks up a fallen branch and tests the current's strength by how it bends the wood. Another examines debris caught in bushes to judge how high the waters rose at their peak. Within minutes, a new route is determined, not the easiest path, nor the shortest, but the one that balances safety with energy conservation. As we detour around the flooded area, notice how certain members periodically glance back over their shoulders. They're not just checking our progress, but memorizing the changed landscape from multiple angles, building mental images that will persist long after the waters recede. This is how they adapt, not by resisting nature's changes, but by moving with them like reeds bending in the wind. As afternoon fades toward evening, we encounter something extraordinary, a series of handprints stenciled in red ochre on an overhanging rock face. The prints vary in size from adult to child, overlapping in places, some so ancient they've nearly faded into the stone. The group gathers before this gallery of ghosts, not in worship, but in quiet communion. An elder reaches up to place their hand against one of the prints, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the echo of that long-ago touch. These marks aren't art in the modern sense. They're signatures left by ancestors saying, "We passed this way." Some prints are positioned deliberately where certain stars would appear above them at solstice times. Others align with distant mountain peaks visible only from this exact vantage point. Each placement holds meaning, creating a celestial and terrestrial map woven together through generations. As we add our own handprints to a blank section of rock using crushed berries mixed with water, we participate in this ancient contract between travelers across time. Night falls as we make camp beneath the painted overhang, the stone still radiating stored warmth from the day's sun. The firelight makes the ancient handprints seem to move, flickering as if their makers still linger just beyond sight. Someone begins humming a melody so old it feels unearthed rather than composed, a traveling song passed down through countless generations. The tune rises and falls in patterns that mirror the day's journey, with staccato bursts for steep climbs and drawn-out notes for long valley stretches. This is how they encoded routes before maps existed, in song lines that describe landscapes through rhythm and pitch, where certain notes correspond to specific landmarks and changes in tempo indicate turns. The children in the group listen while shaping small clay figures by firelight, their hands unconsciously molding the day's journey into tangible form. Here a river bend, there a distinctive tree, over there a rock formation that looked like a sleeping bear. These figurines aren't playthings but memory aids, physical representations of mental maps being formed in young minds. Lying back to watch the stars rotate slowly above us, you realize these people didn't just travel across land, they traveled through time itself. Every step connected them to those who walked before and those who would walk after. The handprints on the rock, the patterns in the songs, the subtle adjustments to change landscapes, these were all threads in an unbroken tapestry of movement and memory. And as you drift towards sleep, you feel your own memories of today's journey settling into your bones, becoming part of you just as surely as they became part of those who walked this path centuries ago. The last conscious thought you have is of your hand resting against the cool stone, fingertips brushing those ancient prints. As if through touch alone you could understand the stories of all who came before, and whisper your own into the stone for those yet to come. The moon hangs swollen and yellow above the tree line as we stir from sleep at an hour when most creatures still slumber. Tonight we walk beneath the silver light, joining the secret society of nocturnal travelers who move when the world holds its breath. The air feels different at night, cooler, denser, carrying scents daytime breezes scatter. As we fall into line behind our guides, notice how their eyes have already adjusted, how their footsteps find purchase on invisible paths. They navigate not just by sight, but by the pressure of earth beneath bare feet, by the way sound travels farther in chilled air, by the subtle temperature gradients that reveal water sources and stone formations alike. Our path takes us through a forest where moonlight filters down in fractured beams, creating pools of quicksilver amid inky shadows. The travelers pause frequently, not from uncertainty but to listen deeply. A twig snaps somewhere to our left, not danger, but opportunity, as the sound reveals a deer trail intersecting our route. The group exchanges glances and adjusts course slightly, merging with this animal path, where the undergrowth already parts willingly. This is how they conserve energy at night, letting other creatures blaze trails they can borrow. Watch how they place each foot with deliberate care, not just for silence, but to read the ground's story through their souls. That slight vibration might signal running water underground. That almost imperceptible slope suggests higher ground ahead. Every footfall gathers information. Around midnight, we emerge into a wide meadow where the Milky Way sprawls across the sky in a glittering smear. The group spreads out, each person finding their own patch of dew-kissed grass to lie upon. But this isn't rest, it's recalibration. As you recline beside them, notice how they study the stars not as static paintings but as moving guides. That constellation there doesn't just indicate north. When its brightest star aligns with a particular notch in the distant mountains, it marks the beginning of the antelope migration. Those 3 stars in a row, when they reach a certain angle above the horizon, signal when to harvest certain tubers. The night sky isn't just a map to these travelers, it's a clock, a calendar, an almanac written in fire. We rise together as one and continue through meadow grass that whispers against our legs, releasing a green, sweet scent with every step. The moon has climbed higher now, its light so bright it casts faint shadows. One of the elders begins pointing out how different plants reflect this light in distinct ways. Silvery sage leaves that glow like miniature moons. Certain flowers that close up but still emit a faint luminescence from their stems. These form a kind of botanical trail marking visible only at night. The younger members practice identifying these subtle signposts, their fingers brushing vegetation lightly as we pass, building tactile memories to pair with the visual. As dawn's first blush tints the eastern sky, we reach our night's destination, a high promontory where the land falls away sharply on 3 sides. The group settles here not just for the defensive advantage, but for the view. In the softening darkness, watch how they study the emerging landscape with fresh eyes. What was hidden by night's shadows now reveals its truth in the creeping light. That dark smudge resolves into a distant forest. Those irregular shapes become boulders strewn across a hillside. The travelers absorb these revelations without surprise, only quiet confirmation of what their night senses had already suggested. This is how they refine their mental maps, by walking country first in darkness, then letting daylight verify what their subtler perceptions had detected. As full morning breaks, we prepare to sleep through the day's heat. But before we settle, notice how each traveler selects their resting spot with purpose. Some choose places where the rising sun will warm them gradually. Others prefer shaded hollows that will stay cool. A few position themselves near certain plants known to repel insects. This too is navigation, not through space but through time, anticipating the sun's arc and arranging their bodies accordingly. The last thing you see before your own eyes close is a young mother showing her child how to arrange pebbles in a circle around their sleeping place, each stone representing a landmark from our night journey. The child's small hands move sleepily, but with surprising precision, recreating the mental map even as sleep claims them. And as you drift off yourself, you realize these people don't just travel across land. They voyage through cycles of light and dark, through seasons and stellar rotations, through waking and dreaming, all part of the same endless journey. The dry season has painted the grasslands in shades of gold and brittle green as we set out under a sky so vast, it seems to swallow the horizon whole. The wind is our constant companion today, not the gentle breeze of river valleys, but a living force that sculpts the tall grass into undulating waves. Our guides walk with heads slightly lifted, nostrils flaring as they drink in the air's secrets. This is navigation by a sense most modern travelers have forgotten, reading the wind's language as it carries stories from lands we cannot yet see. The morning begins with an odd ritual. An elder kneels, plucks a handful of dry grass, and tosses it into the air. The group watches intently as the blades dance and scatter not random chaos, but a map written in movement. The way the strands catch the current reveals subtle eddies and flows, showing where the wind curls around distant hills or funnels through hidden valleys. One of the younger travelers mimics the gesture, frowning as their grass falls differently. The elder nods. This is how knowledge passes, not through lectures but through shared observation, through failures that teach more than successes ever could. As we walk, the wind shifts direction without warning, and the entire group adjusts course almost imperceptibly. At first, the change seems arbitrary until you notice the subtle signs. The new angle carries the faintest hint of moisture, a barely there dampness that speaks of water over the next rise. The travelers don't just smell this, they feel it in the way the air moves against their skin, cooler where it rolls off unseen streams. Their bodies have become instruments finely tuned to atmospheric shifts, detecting what no map could ever record. By midday, the wind grows restless, whipping dust into spirals that skitter across our path. The group halts near a stand of gnarled trees bent permanently eastward by years of relentless gusts. These wind tellers serve as natural compasses, their shapes a record of prevailing currents. One of the travelers runs a hand along the smooth, wind-polished bark, feeling the grooves left by countless storms. These trees are more than shelter, they are archives. The spacing between their branches, the angle of their roots, even the way their leaves vibrate in the breeze, all of it tells a story about the land beyond. As afternoon fades, we reach a place where the wind behaves strangely. It doesn't flow in one direction but swirls unpredictably, as if confused. The group slows, wary. Someone picks up a feather and lets it go. It spins wildly before being sucked downward into a crevice. A murmur passes through the travelers. This is a wind trap, a place where air currents collide and sink, often marking unstable terrain or hidden caves beneath the surface. Without a word, we edge around it, giving the anomaly wide berth. The wind has warned us, and they know better than to ignore it. Dusk brings a new kind of wind, the night breeze that rolls down from the hills as the earth cools. It carries different scents now. The musk of animals stirring at twilight, the dampness of dew forming on grass blades, the faint smokiness of distant fires. The travelers inhale deeply, sorting through these olfactory clues like scholars poring over scrolls. Someone points to where the breeze ruffles a patch of reeds in rhythmic pulses, not random, but echoing the shape of some unseen landmark shaping its flow. These subtle patterns are their road signs, their waypoints, their rest stops. We make camp in the lee of a sandstone outcrop where the wind's voice softens to a murmur. As the fire crackles, watch how the smoke behaves. It doesn't just rise, but twists in particular ways, revealing air currents too subtle to feel on skin. The travelers study it with quiet focus, noting how it occasionally dips toward the ground before rising again, a sign of shifting pressure that might mean rain before morning. Someone begins weaving dried grasses into a small wheel, not for decoration but as a wind recorder. The varying tightness of the weave corresponds to wind patterns observed today, creating a physical memory that can be unraveled and studied later. Lying back to watch the stars, you realize these people don't fight the wind, they converse with it. They don't see it as an obstacle but as a guide, as alive and communicative as any fellow traveler. Every gust carries meaning, every eddy holds a lesson, and as sleep takes you, the last thing you hear is the wind moving through grass, like a storyteller whispering secrets to those patient enough to listen. The first light of dawn reveals a landscape transformed overnight. Where yesterday there was open grassland, now we stand before a labyrinth of weathered stone, great slabs jutting from the earth like the broken teeth of some primordial giant. The air hums with a peculiar stillness here, as if the wind itself hesitates to disturb this sacred geometry. Our guides pause, not in uncertainty but in quiet reverence. These stones are not obstacles, they are waypoints in a story far older than memory. As we enter the stone maze, notice how the traveler's hands brush against rock surfaces with deliberate care. The textures tell stories, smooth patches where countless hands have touched over generations, rough grooves marking seasonal water channels, faint striations recording ancient glacial movements. One particularly tall monolith stands slightly apart from the others, its surface covered in strange, swirling patterns that catch the morning light. These aren't random erosions, they're petroglyphs, a language carved not in letters, but in spirals and concentric circles that mirror celestial patterns. The eldest among us places both palms against the stone and closes their eyes, feeling the vibrations of the earth through this natural antenna. Somewhere deep below, water moves through hidden channels, sending imperceptible tremors through the rock, a secret map of underground springs. Midday finds us resting in the shadow of two leaning stones that form a perfect archway. The group doesn't choose this spot randomly at exactly noon. The sun aligns with the arch to cast a dagger of light across a series of cup-shaped depressions in the bedrock below. Watch how the travelers use this solar alignment to check their internal sense of time and direction. The youngest members practice lining up pebbles along the light's path, learning to read these stone calendars that mark solstices and equinoxes with unerring accuracy. This isn't primitive astronomy, it's a precision instrument carved by time itself. As we move deeper into the stone forest, observe how the path seems to twist illogically, doubling back on itself at times. Yet the group never falters, they're following something invisible to the untrained eye. Certain rocks bear almost imperceptible polish marks at knee height where generations of travelers have brushed past. Others have faint scratch marks at specific points, not random vandalism, but directional indicators visible only when moonlight strikes them at a particular angle. The entire labyrinth is a three-dimensional map, its pathways encoded in the wear patterns of 1,000 passing feet. Late afternoon light reveals the stones, true magic. As the sun lowers, certain surfaces begin to glow with embedded minerals, forming luminous lines that crisscross the landscape like celestial stitches. The travelers adjust their route to follow these glowing veins, knowing they lead to safe night camps where the Earth's natural radiation is lowest. Someone pauses to place their ear against a peculiarly pockmarked boulder. When struck lightly with another stone, it emits a deep, resonant tone that carries for miles. These singing stones serve as natural communication devices, their unique frequencies conveying messages across vast distances to those who know how to listen. Dusk transforms the stone forest into something otherworldly. The rocks seem to breathe as they release stored heat, creating subtle thermal currents that stir the dust in hypnotic patterns. The group gathers in a natural amphitheater where the acoustics amplify even whispered words. Here, they begin a chant unlike anything you've heard before, not melody, but geology made audible. Certain notes make particular stones vibrate in sympathy, their harmonics revealing hollow chambers beneath the surface where water or shelter might be found. This is navigation turned to ritual, science disguised as song. As night fully claims the land, the stones begin their silent vigil. Some radiate residual warmth perfect for leaning against. Others collect dew in strategic basins, nature's water collectors, placed precisely where travelers need them most. The eldest tells a story not with words, but by tracing finger lines along a particular sequence of stones, each touch revealing part of a creation myth written in mineral and time. The children sleep curled in natural depressions that fit their small bodies perfectly, as if the earth itself prepared these resting places. Lying beneath stars framed by towering monoliths, you realize these people don't move through the landscape, they converse with it. Every rock formation is a page in an epic poem, every mineral vein a stanza in nature's grand composition. The stones remember what humans forget, and these travelers have simply learned to listen. As sleep takes you, your dreams fill with the slow, patient language of geology, the grinding of continents, the whisper of erosion, the deep, resonant hum of the living earth beneath you. Morning mist clings to the grasslands as we awaken to a world alive with movement. Before human eyes fully focus, the land already teems with creatures going about their ancient routines, a herd of deer picking their way through dew-heavy grass, a fox trotting along some invisible track, birds arsing across the sky in fluid formations. Our group rises with quiet purpose, not to begin their own journey, but first to observe the journeys already unfolding around them. For these travelers, animals are more than potential prey, they are the original navigators. Their paths worn into the land long before humans ever walked here. Watch how the eldest tracker studies a disturbed patch of grass where deer passed in the night. The bending of stems tells not just direction, but timing. These blades are already springing back, meaning the herd moved through before midnight. A broken spiderweb between two bushes reveals the height of the largest animals. Even the depth of hoofprints in soft earth indicates whether they carried the weight of pregnancy, valuable knowledge for hunters. but equally vital for travelers, because following game means following life itself. The group adjusts their route fractionally to parallel the deer trail, knowing these creatures will lead them to water and fresh grazing. As midday sun beats down, we come upon a dried river that seems to go nowhere. Just as confusion might set in, notice how one traveler kneels to examine tiny lizard tracks in the dust. The reptile's winding path makes no sense at first glance until you realize each zigzag corresponds to patches of residual moisture beneath seemingly identical stones. The lizard knew which rocks to flip for insects and dew, creating a hidden water map across the parched landscape. The group begins overturning specific stones, not randomly but by reading the lizard's subtle signs, collecting precious droplets from each one. This is how knowledge accumulates, not through dominance over nature, but through patient observation of its teachers. In the afternoon heat, the travelers pause beneath a sprawling acacia where the bark bears strange grooves at shoulder height. These aren't random marks, they're the work of generations of elephants, rubbing their tusks against the trunk. The pattern of scaring indicates this is a regular stopping point on some pachyderm highway stretching back centuries. The group lingers here not just for shade, but because elephant paths are nature's perfect engineering, always taking the most energy-efficient route, avoiding unstable ground, never climbing unnecessarily when a gentle detour exists. By aligning their path with these ancient elephant ways, the humans tap into a wisdom far older than their own. As dusk approaches, we reach a cliff face pockmarked with small holes. At first glance it appears barren, but then a flock of swallows returns in a chattering cloud, each bird diving unerringly into its designated crevice. The travelers watch this aerial bollet with intense focus, noting how certain birds use particular rock formations as approach markers. One young member points excitedly to where 3 stones form a distinctive shape when lined up with a distant dead tree. They create a perfect flight path to the safest nesting holes. This is how navigation knowledge passes between species. The swallows learned the rock's landmarks, the humans learned from the swallows, and somewhere in this silent exchange, the land itself remembers all their journeys. Nightfall reveals the most extraordinary lesson of all. Far from any campfire's glow, the group gathers around a termite mound that towers above their heads. In the moonlight, its surface appears carved with intricate patterns not random, but perfectly aligned to channel breezes for ventilation. The eldest traveler places both hands on the mound's sun-warmed surface, then gestures for others to do the same. The structure pulses with residual heat, like a living thing, warmer on one side where it absorbed afternoon sun, cooler where morning light had touched it. These termites, blind since birth, built the ultimate compass without ever seeing the sky. And now the humans borrow that wisdom, using the mound's temperature gradients to confirm their own sense of direction when clouds hide the stars. Lying awake later, listening to the night's chorus of insects and distant predators, you realize these travelers don't see themselves as separate from the animal world. The deer trails become their trails, the bird markers become their markers, the termite's internal compass confirms their own. Every creature moving through this landscape writes its story into the earth, and the humans have simply learned to read that grand, interconnected narrative. As sleep finally takes you, your dreams fill with hoofbeats that sound like footsteps, wing beats that feel like heartbeats, and the unshakable sense that all paths, whether made by beast or human, are just different verses in the same eternal song of motion across the waiting earth. The first light of dawn finds us standing at the edge of what modern maps call wilderness, but to our Stone Age companions, this is simply home. The air smells different here, carrying traces of pine resin and cold stone. A subtle shift that makes the group pause and inhale deeply. They're not just smelling the present moment, they're comparing it to memory, detecting how the scentscape has changed since their last passing. As we step forward, notice how their feet seem to find purchase on nearly invisible depressions in the grass, not animal trails, but something far more intriguing. These are the ghost paths, human-worn roots so ancient the very soil remembers them, compressed by generations of travelers moving in perfect unison along the land's most natural lines. Morning reveals the first clear marker, a boulder with one face polished smooth by countless hands brushing against it over centuries. The travelers approach it like an old friend, their fingers automatically finding the worn grooves where grip after grip has shaped the stone. This isn't accidental erosion, it's a tactile guidepost, its smoothness indicating the safest path around an otherwise treacherous slope. The youngest member of the group, barely tall enough to reach the polished section, mimics the gesture without understanding yet. But with each journey, the knowledge will seep into their muscles until they too can navigate blindfolded by touch alone. Watch how they place their small feet precisely where the grass lies flattest, instinctively following the subconscious path their ancestors wore into the earth. As midday sun reaches its zenith, we come upon a clearing that seems unremarkable until the travelers begin gathering stones from specific spots along the perimeter. Each rock, when overturned, reveals a darker underside damp with condensation. This isn't random moisture, it's the result of precise placement generations ago, when someone arranged these stones to catch morning dew in a particular pattern. The configuration forms a perfect arrow pointing toward a distant mountain pass invisible from ground level. This is slow navigation, wayfinding measured not in hours but in generations, where each traveler maintains the markers for those who will come after. The group takes turns resetting the stones exactly as they found them, preserving the hidden message for future wayfarers. Afternoon shadows stretch long as we reach a river crossing that shouldn't work. The water runs swift and deep, with no visible shallows. Yet the group moves without hesitation to a particular bend, where the current looks most dangerous. Just beneath the churning surface, unseen except to those who know to look, lies a chain of strategically placed boulders. Their arrangement seems random until you watch the first traveler step onto the barely submerged stones, their bare feet reading the rocks like braille. Each stepping stone sits exactly where the current is weakest, placed there centuries ago and maintained by every passing group that added a stone or cleared debris. This is collaborative navigation, where no single traveler owns the path, but all share responsibility for its preservation. Dusk finds us atop a windswept ridge, where the last light reveals something extraordinary. The entire landscape below seems to shimmer with faint, crisscrossing lines. These aren't physical trails but alignments of vegetation, subtle changes in grass color and density that form perfect geometric patterns across miles of terrain. The travelers point out how certain lines align with solstice sunrises, others with distant mountain peaks, still others with seasonal star positions. This is no accident, it's the cumulative effect of thousands of human footsteps over thousands of years, all moving in sacred alignment with celestial rhythms. The paths remember even when people forget, their presence etched into the very biology of the plants themselves. As night falls, the group performs an unexpected ritual. Each member scatters a handful of specially chosen seeds along our day's route, not random, but plants known to thrive along human paths. Some will bloom white in moonlight to mark safe passages. Others change leaf texture where the soil compacts most, creating tactile guides for night travel. Still others bear seed pods that rattle in wind, nature's signposts that require no human maintenance. This is navigation as gardening, wayfinding as ecosystem stewardship, where humans don't dominate nature, but collaborate with it to create living maps that sustain all travelers, human, animal, and spirit alike. Lying awake beneath stars that have guided countless generations before us, you realize these paths don't truly disappear. They fade from sight perhaps, but remain etched in the angle a tree leans, the way moss grows thicker on certain rock faces, the almost imperceptible depression of soil, where foot after foot after foot fell in perfect rhythm. Modern roads may pave over them, but the old ways still whisper beneath the surface, waiting for those who still know how to listen. As sleep finally claims you, your last conscious thought is of your own feet touching earth, not just walking upon the land, but joining an unbroken traveler stretching back to the very first human who ever left a footprint, and forward to all those yet to come. The path remembers. It always remembers. The cold bite of pre-dawn air wakes us before the sun has crested the horizon. There's no campfire this morning. Instead, the travelers gather around a patch of blackened earth where flames danced the night before. An elder kneels, running fingers through the cool ashes with surprising reverence. These aren't just the remains of warmth and safety. They're a map, a record, a story written in charcoal and soot. The way the ashes feather out in particular directions tells of last night's winds. The depth of burn marks indicates how long they burned. Even the arrangement of half-consumed logs points toward tomorrow's intended path. This is navigation by fire, not just its light, but its memory. As we set out, the morning frost still clinging to yellowed grass blades, watch how the group occasionally pauses beside particular trees. Not the largest or straightest, but those bearing ancient scars, blackened diamonds where long ago fires licked their bark. These, fire trees, form a network of waypoints stretching back generations. Some marks are so old they've healed over into raised scars, while others show fresher burns where recent travelers renewed the signals. The eldest traveler touches each one in passing, not just acknowledging the marker, but adding their own energy to this chain of communication stretching across time. Midday brings us to a wide clearing where the ground dips into a shallow bowl. At first glance it appears natural, but the travelers' excited murmurs suggest otherwise. They fan out across the depression, brushing away leaves to reveal what lies beneath, not soil, but layer upon layer of ancient hearths. This is no random campsite but a designated stopping place, used so consistently over centuries that the accumulated ash has actually changed the land's shape. Someone digs fingers into the strata, reading the history like pages in a book here, a thick layer suggesting harsh winters when people lingered longer. There a thin band marking drought years when few passed through. Even the composition tells stories. More birch bark in some layers means harder winters when its flammable properties were prized, while abundant pine pitch indicates times of plentiful resin. As afternoon wanes, we reach a river too wide and swift to cross. Just as frustration might set in, watch how the travelers turn their attention upstream. There, nearly hidden by undergrowth, stands a ring of blackened stones, an ancient hearth placed precisely where the current slows. This is no accident. Generations ago, someone recognized that the bend's unique hydrology made it the safest crossing point, and marked it with fire so others would know. The stones still hold heat differently than their surroundings, warmer in sunlight, slower to cool at dusk, creating subtle thermal cues that guide even in darkness. The group rebuilds the fire ring carefully, not just for tonight's use, but to maintain this vital marker for those who will come after. Dusk falls as flames once again leap to life, but tonight's fire carries special significance. The eldest traveler withdraws a small pouch from their belongings, sprinkling pinches of powder into the flames that make them burn blue, then green, then startling white. These aren't mere pyrotechnics, they're mineral salts from distant locations, each color corresponding to a different direction. Blue for the salt flats to the north, green for the copper-rich hills eastward, white for the limestone caves southwest. The children watch wide-eyed as the elder asks, the fire for guidance, interpreting how different colors burn longest as signs for tomorrow's path. This is chemistry as compass, elements as elders. Later, when only embers remain, observe how the group arranges the dying coals in specific patterns before sleeping. Some are pulled into straight lines pointing toward tomorrow's first landmark. Others form circles around sleeping places, not just for warmth but to create thermal markers that will remain visible to pre-dawn eyes. A particularly bright coal is placed atop a flat rock by morning. Its residual heat will reveal which direction the night winds blew, nature's weather vane written in cooling carbon. Lying awake watching fireflies mirror the dying embers, you realize these people don't just use fire, they converse with it. Each flame carries memories of every fire that came before, every path ever lit, every ancestor who ever huddled around its warmth. The hearth isn't merely a tool but a living record, its ashes the archives of countless journeys. As sleep finally takes you, your dreams fill with dancing flames that form maps in their flickering, telling stories only those who truly listen can understand. The fire remembers all who passed this way. It always remembers. The first rays of dawn filter through the canopy in broken strands of gold, waking us to a world where every tree tells a story. The air hums with the green scent of photosynthesis, beginning its daily work. And as we rise, notice how the travelers immediately turn their faces upward, not to check the weather, but to read the forest's hidden messages written in the language of leaves. This is navigation at its most intimate, where every branch and blossom becomes a signpost in nature's endless guidebook. Morning reveals the first lesson as we pass beneath an ancient oak whose branches grow strangely lopsided. The travelers pause here, not for rest but for education. Run your fingers along the trunk and feel how one side bears nearly invisible scars, tiny cuts made generations ago by careful hands. These, whisper marks, align with specific branches that naturally grow toward water sources. The tree itself has become a living compass, its growth patterns manipulated over decades to point the way. Young members of the group practice making new nicks at precise angles, knowing these subtle cuts will guide the tree's future growth as a beacon for their children's children. As we move deeper into the woods, observe how sunlight filters differently through various tree species. Maples allow dappled light that creates shifting patterns good for marking time. Beech trees hold their dead leaves through winter, providing year-round sound markers when wind rattles their branches. But most precious are the occasional basswoods with their large, heart-shaped leaves that turn perpendicular to the sun's path, nature's own sundials. The travelers brush certain leaves as they pass, not randomly but to hear their distinctive rustle. Each species makes a unique sound when disturbed, creating an auditory map that works even when fog or darkness obscures vision. Midday finds us in a grove where the trees grow in unnatural straight lines. This is no accident of nature but a living artifact, a trail marker forest planted centuries ago to guide through what was once trackless wilderness. The alignment points toward a mountain pass, only visible from this exact vantage point. The eldest traveler produces a handful of acorns from their pouch, planting new seedlings along the invisible line to maintain this arboreal compass for future generations. This is slow navigation, where wayfinding projects span human lifetimes. Afternoon brings us to the forest's edge, where the trees thin into meadow. Here, the travelers examine not the leaves, but the lichens clinging to north-facing bark. Certain species only grow in precise arrangements that correspond to distance from water. A reddish-orange variety grows thicker within 2 days' walk of mineral deposits. A gray-green type forms spiral patterns that indicate elevation changes. The group collects samples not as souvenirs but as reference points, comparing each new find to mental maps carried in memory. As dusk settles, watch how the travelers select specific leaves for bedding, not the softest or most abundant, but those containing subtle chemical properties that repel insects or regulate body temperature. Alder leaves for warmth on cool nights, walnut leaves to deter biting flies, broad plantain leaves that cushion better than any modern mattress. Each choice reflects deep knowledge of the forest's pharmacy, turning sleep itself into an extension of wayfinding restorative navigation, where the body heals even as the mind continues journeying in dreams. Lying awake beneath this living cathedral of branches, you realize these people don't move through the forest, they move with it, as part of it. The trees are not passive observers but active participants in their journeys. A bent branch here, a leaf pattern there. A particular moss growth all form syllables in an unspoken dialogue between humans and the land that sustains them. As sleep finally takes you, the last thing you hear is the gentle applause of leaves in the night breeze, as if the forest itself approves of those who still remember how to listen to its ancient, rustling wisdom. The first sliver of dawn finds us already moving, our footsteps silent on the dew-slick grass. Today's journey begins in that magical hour when the world exists in shades of pearl and charcoal, when shadows stretch long across the land, like dark rivers flowing westward. The travelers move with unusual purpose this morning, their eyes constantly scanning the ground ahead, not for obstacles, but for something far more subtle. They're reading the shadow patterns as they would a map, tracing lines of darkness and light that reveal secrets invisible under the harsh midday sun. As the sun climbs, notice how the group adjusts their route to keep specific landmarks aligned with their shadows. That jagged rock formation ahead isn't just a curiosity. When its shadow touches the crook pine at midday, it marks the turn towards summer grazing grounds. The travelers walk with the sun at precise angles, using their own shadows as measuring sticks to gauge distances. A child laughs as she jumps to make her shadow touch a particular stone. This isn't play but practice, learning to calculate ranges through body awareness that modern GPS has made us forget. Midday brings us to a wide, flat expanse of stone where the sun beats down mercilessly. Just when the light seems most blinding, the travelers gather at a particular outcropping where the rock surface bears strange, spiraling grooves. As noon arrives exactly, watch how these carvings come alive. The shallow channels fill with sharp black shadows that form perfect lines, pointing in multiple directions. This is no random artwork, but a sophisticated solar compass. Its angles calculated over generations to mark trade routes, water sources, and sacred sites. The eldest traveler places a hand in the center where all shadows converge, feeling the stone's stored heat as confirmation of its accuracy. As afternoon wanes, we enter a narrow canyon where the walls rise steep on either side. Here, the travelers move with renewed caution, their eyes tracking how the fading light paints stripes across the rock faces. Certain mineral veins glow briefly when struck by sunlight at this exact angle, revealing almost invisible folds carved into the stone long ago. This is the canyon's golden hour, not for photography, but for passage. The group moves swiftly along this illuminated path, knowing the light will last just long enough to guide them through safely before darkness falls. Dusk transforms our surroundings into a theater of silhouettes. The travelers pause at a high vantage point where the setting sun backlights the landscape in perfect relief. What was hidden by daylight now reveals itself, in sharp outline, the distant notch in the mountains that marks a pass, the serpentine curve of a river still miles ahead, the distinctive profile of a lone tree that signals good camping. They commit these shapes to memory not by overthinking, but by letting the images sink into their subconscious, where they'll resurface in dreams. Nightfall doesn't mean the end of light navigation. As stars emerge, the group gathers around a shallow depression filled with waters, so still it becomes a perfect mirror of the heavens. They study not just the stars themselves, but their reflections, how certain constellations distort near the water's edges, creating natural measuring tools that compensate for atmospheric changes. A young apprentice practices lining up terrestrial landmarks with these celestial reflections, learning to navigate by star shadows, cast not by absence of light, but by its perfect duplication. Lying awake later beneath a sky dizzy with stars, you realize these people don't fear darkness, they understand it as simply another kind of light. Every shadow holds meaning, every silhouette tells a story, every reflection offers guidance to those patient enough to observe. The dance between light and dark isn't just visual poetry, but a practical tool, as reliable as any compass and far older. As sleep finally takes you, your last conscious thought is of shadows moving across your closed eyelids, not distractions, but guides, leading you gently into dreams as ancient as humanity's first night under the stars. The pre-dawn darkness hums with a silence so deep it becomes its own kind of music. We wake not to alarms or birdsong, but to the subtle vibrations of the earth itself, a distant rumble of water underground. The faint tremor of animal movement transmitted through soil, the almost imperceptible sigh of trees shifting in the night's last breeze. Our Stone Age companions rise with hands pressed to the ground, reading these vibrations like scholars poring over sacred texts. Today's journey will be guided not by sight or scent, but by listening to the songs hidden in the very bones of the land. As first light stains the horizon, the group gathers around a massive, flat stone partially embedded in the earth. One by one, they take turns kneeling and placing their foreheads against its cool surface, while tapping specific points with small river rocks. Watch how their eyes close in concentration as sound waves travel through the stone, hollow echoes revealing underground chambers, sharper pings indicating dense mineral deposits. The eldest demonstrates how certain spots produce tones that match the distant mountain's resonance frequency, creating a natural tuning fork to maintain direction without visible landmarks. Young apprentices practice until their hands learn the exact pressure needed to make the stone speak clearly. Mid-morning finds us crossing a dry riverbed where the baked clay cracks in geometric patterns. The travelers pause here, not for rest but for revelation. Someone produces a deer antler and drags its tip along one of the deeper fissures, producing an eerie, warbling hum that shivers through the ground. Others drop to their knees, hands flat on the parched earth, feeling how the vibration changes when it reaches different soil types. This isn't music, it's echolocation, Stone Age style. The clay's song reveals where water flows closest to the surface, even in this seemingly barren place. Noon brings us to a field of boulders strewn across the hillside like discarded game pieces. The group spreads out, each member selecting a different stone to play, with smooth river rocks. The resulting tones vary dramatically, deep gongs from dense basalt, higher pings from flint-rich nodules, dull thuds from sandstone. But occasionally, A stone rings with perfect clarity, its tone sustained and pure. These become waypoints, their unique acoustic signatures remembered as clearly as visual landmarks. The travelers mark them not with paint or carvings, but by arranging smaller stones in resonant patterns that amplify their natural tones when wind passes through. As afternoon shadows lengthen, we reach a place where the wind whistles through narrow rock formations with uncanny precision. The travelers add their own voices to this natural symphony, humming at frequencies that make particular stones vibrate in sympathy. One massive slab begins emitting a low, throbbing pulse when struck precisely its vibrations, traveling up through our legs and into our bones. The eldest explains without words how this, singing stone, can be felt from miles away by those attuned to such signals, serving as both landmark and communication device. Children practice the exact angle and force needed to activate it, their small hands learning this tactile language of the earth. Dusk transforms our journey into a vibration hunting expedition. With no light to guide us, the travelers spread out in a loose line, periodically stomping on the ground and listening for the returning echo. Different terrains produce distinct tremors, the quick, sharp rebound of solid bedrock indicating safe paths, the muted thump of loose scree warning of unstable footing. Someone drops a heavy stone down a slope, and by the time it comes to rest, the entire group knows whether the grade is walkable based solely on the sound of its tumbling. Nightfall finds us camped beside a shallow depression where the earth vibrates with surprising intensity. Place your palm flat on the ground here, and you'll feel it, the distant thunder of a waterfall we can't yet see or hear, transmitted through miles of rock like a whisper through a copper wire. The travelers sleep with hands or bare feet touching the ground, their dreams attuned to these subterranean messages. As you drift into sleep yourself, you realize these people navigate not across the land, but with it, feeling its vibrations as a blind person might read Braille, hearing its songs as a sailor hears the sea, moving in harmony with a world that's never truly silent for those who know how to listen. The last thing you're aware of is the Earth's slow, steady pulse beneath you, not your heartbeat, but the planets, lulling you into dreams of deep, resonant darkness. Morning mist rises from the river like a waking breath as we stand barefoot in the shallows, our toes sinking into silt that remembers every flood season for 1,000 years. The water flows not just around our ankles, but through our very awareness, its endless murmur telling stories older than human memory. Today we won't just follow the river, we'll learn to listen to it, to understand how these liquid highways guided our ancestors long before the first stone path was ever laid. As we wade upstream, notice how the travelers frequently pause to cup river water in their hands and let it drain slowly through their fingers. They're not just drinking, they're reading the sediments. Fine, powdery silt means we're approaching floodplains where the current slows. Grittier sand with small pebbles signals higher ground ahead. Occasionally someone finds a twig and lets it float downstream, watching how it spins in the current, not idle play, but study of the water's hidden topography. The way an eddy catches debris might reveal submerged boulders or deep pools perfect for fishing. Midday brings us to a place where the river splits around a wedge-shaped island. The group doesn't hesitate in choosing the left fork, though both channels look identical to untrained eyes. Watch how they trail fingers along particular moss patterns, growing on submerged rocks. Thick green strands always grow toward the main current, their direction pointing the true way like underwater weather vanes. One traveler retrieves a smooth stone from the right channel, taps it against his teeth, and shakes his head. The hollow sound reveals porous rock from weaker tributaries, not the dense stone of the main river. As afternoon heat thickens the air, we come upon a series of shallow depressions carved into the riverbank, not natural formations, but ancient resting places worn smooth by generations of travelers pausing here. The travelers settle into these human-shaped hollows as if returning to familiar chairs, their bodies fitting perfectly into spaces molded by ancestors they never knew. One elder points to nearly invisible notches cut into the stone at different heights, flood markers, recording centuries of high water levels, a hydrological calendar warning of seasonal dangers. Dusk transforms the river into a liquid mirror reflecting the fading sky. The group gathers at a bend where the water moves in peculiar spirals. Someone produces a dried gourd and submerges it carefully. letting the current fill it with a swirling dance of water and air. Held to an ear, this simple vessel becomes an oracle, the pitch of its gurgle indicating the river's speed and temperament. The travelers pass the gourd from person to person, each adding their interpretation to the collective understanding of tomorrow's journey. Nightfall doesn't mean the river stops guiding. Moonlight reveals subtle differences in surface texture where warmer spring-fed currents mix with the main flow. The travelers trail hands in these thermal ribbons, following invisible paths marked by temperature as clearly as road signs. Occasionally someone dips a finger and tastes the water. A slightly metallic tang might signal mineral deposits upstream, while a cleaner flavor suggests approaching rapids where the water aerates itself. Lying awake beside the eternal murmur of flowing water, you realize these people don't just use the river, they hold conversation with it. Every ripple speaks, every eddy whispers, every stone worn smooth tells of time's patient passage. The water remembers every foot that ever waded through it, every hand that ever dipped to drink, every storm that ever swelled its banks. And as sleep finally takes you, your dreams flow with the current, not fighting the water's will, but moving with it, through moonlit gorges and sun-dappled shallows, carried toward some distant sea where all rivers remember their source. Dawn breaks not with color, but with texture, a gradual softening of the horizon, where sky meets land in a seam of pearlescent light. We rise to find our Stone Age companions already studying the morning clouds with the intensity of scholars deciphering scrolls. Today's journey will be guided not by footprints or stone markers, but by the ever-shifting language of the sky itself. The air around us isn't empty space, it's a living map written in vapor and wind, waiting to be read by those who know its alphabet. As we begin moving, watch how the travelers frequently pause to toss handfuls of dry grass into the air. This isn't ritual but meteorology. The way the strands catch the light reveals subtle atmospheric layers, invisible to the naked eye. A child laughs as she chases the floating blades, but notice how her eyes instinctively track their drift, already learning to read wind patterns that will one day tell her if storms approach or if drought lingers. The eldest member sniffs the air constantly, not just for scents but for humidity. The way it changes inside the nostrils can signal shifting weather hours before clouds appear. Mid-morning brings us to an open plain where the sky stretches uninterrupted in all directions. Here, the group spreads out in a wide formation, each person studying different sections of the horizon. What looks like empty blue to modern eyes is actually a complex tapestry of clues to them. That faint haze to the northwest, not pollution but pollen from distant flowering meadows, carried on winds that will soon bring rain. Those barely visible ripples in the upper atmosphere. They'll distort the sun's position by precisely 2 fingers width by midday, knowledge that keeps solar navigation accurate even when the sky seems clear. Noon arrives with a sun that doesn't blaze down from directly overhead, but hangs slightly off-center, in effect, caused by atmospheric refraction our travelers account for without conscious thought. They've learned to read the sun's true position by how shadows blur at the edges, by the way heat shimmers distort distant rocks, by the precise angle at which sunlight ignites patches of mica in the soil into sudden flashes. A young apprentice practices telling time by measuring his shadow not in feet but in handspans, the distance from elbow to fingertips being more consistent across individuals than any standardized measurement. As afternoon wanes, high clouds begin feathering across the sky like mares' tails. The group quickens their pace not in fear, but purpose. These particular clouds move differently at various altitudes, their layered directions creating a 3-dimensional map of coming weather. The travelers point out how lower clouds scud east, while higher ones drift north, a sign that the safe crossing at Three Forked River will be passable tomorrow, but treacherous the next day. Someone produces a length of sinew tied with feathers and holds it aloft, watching how the strands separate in the crosswinds, an ancient anemometer predicting wind shifts hours in advance. Dusk transforms the sky into a scroll of fire and gold. The travelers don't just admire the sunset, they study it. That green flash as the sun disappears isn't optical illusion, but information. Its intensity indicates the thickness of tomorrow's morning mist. The way colors reflect differently on certain rock formations creates a temporary mirror of the western horizon, allowing them to see weather conditions far beyond the visible landscape. Children play a game tossing handfuls of fine dust into the air. The particles catch the angled light to reveal microcurrents and turbulence near ground level, invisible otherwise. Nightfall brings a sky so crowded with stars it seems impossible to navigate. Yet the travelers identify constellations not by their shapes, but by their flicker patterns. The way certain stars twinkle more when low on the horizon indicates atmospheric stability. That bright star that doesn't twinkle at all. They know it as the wanderer we call Venus, its steady light serving as a celestial anchor point. Someone draws a circle in the dirt and marks where particular stars touch the horizon by morning. Earth's rotation will have turned this simple diagram into a precise clock and compass. Lying awake beneath this infinite expanse, you realize these people don't just look at the sky, they converse with it. Every breeze carries meaning, every cloud formation tells a story, every subtle shift in light quality holds clues about the journey ahead. The atmosphere isn't empty space to them, it's the breath of the land itself, exhaling warnings and invitations to those who know how to listen. As sleep finally takes you, your last conscious thought is of the wind moving gently across your face, not random air currents, but the oldest map of all, written in a language felt rather than seen, as ancient as the first human who ever looked up and wondered what the sky was trying to say. The first light of dawn finds us not packing or preparing, but standing perfectly still in a circle, eyes closed, breathing in unison. Our Stone Age companions begin each journey this way, not with movement, but with remembrance. They're awakening something deeper than muscle memory, something ancient travelers called the knowing in the bones. Today's path won't be found on any map, but in the silent wisdom carried within each cell, passed down through generations of footsteps imprinted on the land and in the blood. As we begin walking, notice how the traveler's strides vary without conscious thought. Shorter steps, uphill to conserve energy, longer ones descending to maintain rhythm. Their feet find the perfect balance between soft and hard ground automatically, avoiding stones that might twist ankles, seeking earth firm enough to support but yielding enough to cushion. This isn't learned behavior, it's inherited knowledge, the same way migrating birds know flight patterns they've never flown. Watch how their shoulders adjust to uneven terrain before their eyes register the change, how their breathing syncs with the landscape's rise and fall. Mid-morning brings us to a fork in the trail where no visible markers distinguish one path from another. Yet the group divides without hesitation, older members taking the left fork, younger the right. This is no arbitrary choice. The elders follow what their bodies remember from previous journeys decades past, while the youth blaze new trails where fresh game signs appear. Later they'll reunite and share knowledge, weaving new pathways into the old. An elder pauses to press both palms against a sun-warmed boulder, eyes closed, not resting, but accessing what some call stone memory. The ability to sense through touch where water flows underground or where caves might form. Noon finds us resting in a meadow where the grass grows in peculiar swirls. The travelers lie flat on the earth, not just to rest but to listen. Place your ear to the ground here, and you'll feel it, the faint, regular vibration of a herd moving miles away, transmitted through soil and bone conduction. The eldest rolls onto their back and begins humming a single sustained note, adjusting pitch until their rib cage vibrates in harmony with the land's natural frequency. This ground resonance reveals safe paths where the tone flows freely. The earth is stable. Where it chokes, danger may lurk beneath. As afternoon shadows lengthen, we reach a slope where the angle defies easy passage. The travelers don't salt or hesitate, their bodies remember solutions their minds have forgotten. Watch how they ascend, not straight up but in a gradual spiral, following some ancient instinct that knows this diagonal approach conserves energy. Their hands automatically find holds their eyes haven't yet seen, their feet testing each rock stability through subtle vibrations before committing weight. Someone pauses to press their forehead against a stone outcropping. When asked why, they simply say, "The mountain remembers the way." Dusk brings us to a campsite used for generations. The travelers don't need to clear space or arrange bedding, their bodies know exactly where to place each item for optimal comfort and safety. As firelight dances across faces, watch how the elders' hands move through storytelling, not just illustrating tales, but passing on physical memory. When describing a treacherous cliff face, Their fingers twitch with the exact movements needed for safe climbing. Children mirror these motions in their sleep, neural pathways forming for challenges they won't face for years. Night falls with a sky so clear the stars reflect in every upturned eye. The travelers don't just see constellations, they feel them. Certain star patterns trigger physical responses, shoulders relaxing when the summer triangle reaches its zenith, breath deepening when Orion's belt aligns with a distant mountain. This is celestial navigation written into the body itself, a map not memorized but inherited. As you drift to sleep, you swear you feel your own bones humming softly, as if remembering paths your feet have never walked, guided by stars your eyes have never seen, following a call as old as the first human who ever wandered beneath this same sky. The land remembers, the body remembers, and in their silent conversation, the way is always found. The moon hangs heavy and full above the tree line as we stir from sleep at an hour when most creatures lie still. Tonight we join the secret fellowship of night travelers, those who walk when the world is painted in shades of silver and shadow. Our Stone Age companions rise with quiet purpose, their eyes already adjusted to the darkness in ways modern humans have forgotten. This is navigation stripped to its essence, no colors to distract, only shapes and textures, and the endless whisper of the night wind. As we begin moving, notice how the travelers' feet seem to feel their way more than see it. The soles of their bare feet rid the ground like braille. That slight dampness means seeping groundwater ahead. That almost imperceptible vibration signals unstable rocks. Their toes splay wide with each step, gathering more information than any shoe-clad foot ever could. A child stumbles sleepily and instinctively throws out both hands not to break the fall, but to feel the texture of grass stems bending in a particular pattern that reveals the most walked path even in utter darkness. The moon climbs higher, casting long shadows that transform familiar landscapes into mysterious new territories. What was an ordinary boulder by daylight now becomes a crouching beast. That simple shrub twists into a dancing spirit. The travelers move through this transformed world not with fear, but with deep attention, reading the night's exaggerated shadows as a map within a map. That elongated shadow pointing northwest. It aligns perfectly with a distant water source when the moon stands at this height. Those interlacing tree shadow patterns. They mark where the ground dips suddenly before rising again. Midnight finds us pausing beside a creek that glimmers like spilled mercury. The travelers don't cross immediately, instead they kneel and cup water in their hands, letting it trickle back into the stream while listening carefully to the sound. Each type of rock beneath the water produces distinct tones. When water flows, over it deeper notes where the way is safe, higher pitches where sharp rocks lurk. Someone breaks a hanging branch and lets it dangle in the current. The angle of its bend reveals the water's hidden strength better than any daylight observation could. As the night deepens, we enter a forest where the canopy blocks most moonlight. Here, the travelers' hands become their primary guides, trailing lightly along tree trunks as we pass. Certain bark textures serve as markers. The rough diamond pattern of oak means straight ahead. The smooth vertical lines of beech indicate turns. Occasionally fingers find carvings made by generations past, not pictures but tactile symbols readable in complete darkness. A series of parallel grooves means danger left. Concentric circles mark good shelter nearby. Zigzags warn of steep drop ahead. This is writing meant for searching hands, not watching eyes. Distant O calls punctuate the darkness, but listen closer. The travelers have begun making soft clicking sounds with their tongues. This isn't communication, but echolocation, using subtle echoes to sense openings in the path ahead. The returning sound waves feel different when spaces widen or narrow, when leaves hang low or stone walls rise beside the trail. Children practice with wide-eyed concentration, their young ears more sensitive to the faint returning echoes. Approaching dawn brings the coldest hours, when even the earth seems to hold its breath. The travelers now navigate by temperature as much as touch. That sudden coolness means water nearby. That slightly warmer patch signals sheltered ground. As first light stains the eastern horizon, we reach our night's destination, a cave mouth where the air flows with peculiar regularity. The eldest traveler places both palms against the rock face, feeling the rhythmic pulses of air being drawn in and expelled as if the mountain itself breathes. This is how they find caves even in complete darkness, by listening for the earth's slow inhalation. Lying down to sleep as daylight returns, you realize these night journeys aren't just practical, they're sacred. In the darkness, senses sharpen in ways daylight dulls. The body remembers older ways of knowing. The mind releases its need to control, and the land reveals secrets it keeps hidden from the sun. As sleep finally takes you, your last thought is that you're not leaving the night behind, you're carrying its lessons into the day, where every shadow now holds depth, every silence speaks, and every footstep connects you to those ancient ones who walked without light but were never truly blind. The horizon stretches empty in all directions, no mountains, no distinctive trees, just endless grasslands swaying like a golden sea under the morning sun. In this featureless expanse, modern travelers would panic, turning circles searching for any point of reference. But our Stone Age companions move with quiet confidence, their inner compasses attuned to subtleties invisible to the untrained eye. Today's journey reveals the most profound navigation, secret of all, how to find your way when there's seemingly nothing to guide you. As we walk, observe how the travelers periodically pause to pluck grass stems and let them fall. This isn't idle habit, they're reading the Earth's magnetic field through vegetation. Certain grasses align their growth patterns with geomagnetic forces, their stems bending imperceptibly toward magnetic north. The elders show children how to find these subtly angled stems among the others, creating a living compass that updates itself with each new generation of growth. Even the spiral patterns of seeds in dried flower heads follow Fibonacci sequences aligned with planetary forces, nature's mathematics providing constant orientation. Midday brings a revelation: what appears as uniform grassland actually contains countless microhabitats. The travelers distinguish them by the way their bodies feel moving through each one. That slight increase in humidity as we enter a depression invisible to the eye. The skin detects it before the mind registers the change. The almost imperceptible slope where water would flow during rains. Muscles adjust stride length automatically to compensate. One elder walks with hands outstretched, fingers sensitive to minute temperature variations that reveal underground water channels or buried stone formations affecting the surface vegetation. The wind becomes our guide as afternoon wears on. At first glance, it seems to blow randomly across the open plain, but the travelers read its patterns like pages in a book. That consistent eddy near waist height indicates a buried, rivered, altering airflow. Those occasional gusts carrying particular pollen scents reveal distant ecosystems beyond the horizon. Someone produces a dried seed pod tied to a leather cord held at arm's length. It doesn't just show wind direction, but oscillates with distinct rhythms that correspond to upcoming terrain changes. Children practice reading these subtle vibrations, their young nerves more sensitive to the coded messages. As dusk approaches, the travelers begin collecting pebbles of varying composition, not random stones, but specific minerals that react to approaching night in unique ways. Some will retain heat longer, serving as tiny warmth reservoirs. Others emit faint phosphorescence when rubbed together after dark. A particular dense volcanic rock gets tied to a cord when suspended. Its slight spin direction is invisible to the eye, but detectable by cheek skin when held close. It confirms directions even when clouds obscure the stars. This is nanotechnology, ancient style, using nature's materials at their most elemental level for navigation. Night transforms our featureless plain into a realm of subtle textures. Without visual landmarks, the travelers switch to full-body wayfinding. That patch of grass that sounds different underfoot, its roots have found moisture. The almost imperceptible vibration in the ground beneath us. It echoes from distant rock formations miles ahead. Someone lies flat and presses an ear to the earth. The combination of heartbeat and ground resonance creates a harmonic that reveals the density of underlying strata. Children take turns practicing, learning to distinguish the sound of sandstone from granite, of clay from volcanic glass. Lying awake beneath stars that seem closer here than anywhere else, you realize true navigation isn't about landmarks at all. It's about developing an ongoing conversation with the living earth, feeling its magnetic pulse in your blood, hearing its vibrations in your bones, smelling its changing moods on the wind. The travelers sleep peacefully in this open expanse, not because they know where they are, but because they know how to be where they are, completely, utterly, in tune with every whisper of the land. As sleep takes you, your last thought is that you've finally learned what it means to be found. Dawn breaks differently today, softer, as if the light itself recognizes we stand at the threshold between wandering and arrival. The air carries a familiar scent your senses can't quite place, yet your body relaxes instinctively. Our Stone Age companions move with quiet purpose, not the urgent strides of those seeking something, but the measured steps of those returning. Today we learn the final navigation secret, how every journey circles back to where it began, and how the land remembers those who walk it with reverence. As we crest the final hill, watch how the travelers of footsteps unconsciously adjust to match some ancient rhythm. Their breathing syncs with the slope's incline in patterns perfected over generations of this same homecoming. The children, who have never seen this place before, nevertheless grow quiet and wide-eyed, some cellular memory awakening at the sight of the valley below. The eldest drops to their knees, not in weariness but in greeting, pressing palms against stone worn smooth by countless such returns. The rock is warm with stored sunlight, vibrating faintly with the underground streams that feed the homecoming pool at the valley's heart. Mid-morning finds us descending through meadows where the flowers grow in intentional spirals, not wild growth, but living signposts tended across centuries. Each bloom variety marks a different aspect of homecoming. Purple lupines indicating clean water ahead, golden poppies warning of thin soil to avoid, white yarrow signaling medicinal patches, left deliberately undisturbed. The travelers move through this floral mosaic with deliberate care, harvesting nothing, disturbing little, adding a few seeds from their journey to maintain the balance. A child laughs as butterflies rise around us in colorful clouds. These aren't random insects, but seasonal markers, their colors and numbers, telling of winter's severity and summer's promise. Noon sunlight reveals what makes this valley different. Every rock, every tree, every bend in the creek bears subtle markings worn by generations of returning hands. That oak's lowest branch shines smooth where travelers have grasped it for balance, crossing the slippery stones. The flat boulder by the water's edge shows polished streaks from countless bone needles sharpened while watching home fires burn. Even the air tastes distinctive here, wood smoke and clay, and the particular mineral tang of the sacred springs blending into an unmistakable signature. The travelers inhale deeply, their bodies relaxing further with each breath, as if the very molecules of home can heal the weariness of wandering. As afternoon wanes, watch how the travelers shed their journey's weight in ritual stages. Weapons get cleaned and stowed in the rock niches where dampness won't reach them. Traveling cloaks are shaken out and hung on particular branches, where wind can cleanse them of foreign dust. Stones gathered from distant places get added to the ancestor cairn, each layer representing generations of returns. Someone begins humming a melody that others gradually join, not a song with words, but a harmonic map made audible, its notes corresponding to landmarks on the homeward path. Children add their voices instinctively, though none have been taught. The tune lives in their bones as surely as their heartbeat. Dusk finds us gathered around the home fire, its flames fed with particular woods that burn with memory as much as heat. Cedar for remembrance, oak for strength, sweetgrass for dreams. The eldest produces a pouch containing ashes from our first night's campfire months ago. These get scattered into the flames now, completing the circle. Stories are told not of destinations reached, but of paths revealed, the unexpected water source found by following bees, the shelter discovered through a fox's startled movement, the safe passage revealed by lichen patterns on stone. Each telling weaves another thread into the great tapestry of belonging. As true night falls and the embers glow like fallen stars, you realize this was never just about physical navigation. The homecoming fire illuminates a deeper truth, that we are all just temporary wanderers on ancient paths, adding our small stories to those written in the land itself. The last thing you see before sleep takes you is the eldest traveler's hands moving slowly above the fire, not in ritual, but tracing the constellations' paths as they wheel overhead, drawing invisible lines between stars and hearth, between journey and home, between then and now and what's yet to come. The path remembers, the fire remembers, and now, at last, so do you. The first light of dawn catches the standing stones at just the right angle, making them glow like sentinels from another age. We've walked all night to reach this circle before sunrise, and now we understand why. As the golden light spills across the plain, It strikes the central monolith and splits into perfect beams pointing in 5 directions. Our Stone Age companions stand motionless, watching this daily miracle with quiet reverence. These aren't mere rocks, they're the first true maps, the original navigation system carved from the living earth itself. As the sun climbs, notice how the travelers move from stone to stone, pressing their palms against different surfaces. Each rock tells a different story through temperature. The eastern face is already warm, the western side still cool from night. But some stones hold surprises. That flat one in the center stays warm all night, hinting at geothermal activity below. The tall, slender one to the north feels strangely electric when touched, its high quartz content reacting to the Earth's magnetic field. The eldest traveler places their forehead against it and closes their eyes, listening to vibrations humans can no longer hear, but the stone remembers. Mid-morning reveals the circle's hidden genius. When clouds pass over the sun, the stones don't lose their power, they simply change languages. Watch how the travelers now study the shadows cast by each monolith, noting how they intersect to form perfect geometric shapes. A child plays with a string between 2 stones, discovering it aligns with a distant mountain pass when pulled taut. Another notices how lichen grows only on certain sides, forming nature's own arrows pointing towards seasonal water sources. This isn't primitive astronomy, it's a masterclass in multidimensional wayfinding. Noon brings the day's greatest revelation. The travelers gather around what appears to be an ordinary flat stone at the circle's edge. But when someone pours water from a skin onto its surface, the liquid doesn't pool randomly, it races along nearly invisible channels carved millennia ago, forming perfect spirals that mirror the constellations above. The eldest traces these watery paths with a finger, explaining how each groove corresponds to a star path used during different seasons. The children take turns adding water, watching in awe as the stone comes alive with liquid constellations, a celestial map written in stone and water. As afternoon shadows lengthen, the stones begin their silent work. That one casts a shadow that perfectly bisects the circle, a sundial marking when to begin evening preparations. Those 2 over there align to form a narrow window, framing the exact position where the moon will rise. The travelers move through this stone symphony with quiet confidence, their bodies remembering rhythms their minds are only beginning to understand. Someone begins humming not a song, but a tone that makes a particular stone vibrate in response, its resonant frequency revealing hidden fractures that could indicate coming earthquakes. Dusk transforms the circle into something magical. The last rays of sunlight strike inclusions in certain rocks, making them glow from within like captured fireflies. The travelers place offerings at these luminous points, not sacrifices, but practical gifts. A bundle of medicinal herbs tied with grass sits where the light lasts longest, its drying enhanced by the stone's residual heat. A newly knotted cord stretches between 2 glowing rocks, absorbing their energy to become a measuring device that will remember this alignment. Night falls completely, and just when you think the stones have gone dormant, the eldest produces a small drum. The hollow tone echoes strangely off certain monoliths, returning altered in ways that reveal their hidden properties. A child gasps as fireflies gather in perfect geometric patterns between the stones drawn by some ancient pheromone or mineral scent humans can't detect. The travelers move through this living grid, their paths tracing constellations only visible in this sacred space at this exact time of year. Lying awake beneath stars framed by standing stones, you realize these monuments aren't just waypoints, they're living entities in constant conversation with earth and sky. The stones remember every footstep, every ceremony, every desperate prayer and joyful homecoming across countless generations. As sleep finally takes you, your dreams fill with visions of these monoliths walking across the landscape, their shadows stretching like compass needles pointing always toward home, toward memory, toward the unbreakable bond between people and the land that sustains them. The stones remember, and tonight, so will you. The sky lightens to the color of wet slate as we stand motionless in the pre-dawn hush, our breath fogging the crisp air. Today's guides haven't arrived yet, but the travelers wait with the patience of those who know nature keeps perfect time. Then, as if summoned, the first bird call pierces the silence, a sharp, clear note that seems to roll across the land like a bead of mercury. Our Stone Age companions smile, the winged navigators have come to show us the way once more. As we walk, notice how the travelers' heads tilt constantly upward, tracking not just individual birds but entire patterns of flight. That V-shaped formation of geese isn't just passing overhead, their angle indicates the location of a river bend still hours ahead. The sporadic darting of swallows reveals invisible air currents that will bring rain by afternoon. A lone hawk circling lazily marks a thermal rising from sun-warmed rocks, nature's elevator, allowing us to survey the landscape from height without climbing. Mid-morning brings a symphony of birdsong that the travelers parse like a complex language. The rhythmic knocking of a woodpecker carries farther in the direction of dense forest. The alarm calls of jays spike when we approach hidden ravines. But most precious are the tiny wrens who seem to follow our progress, their cheerful songs marking safe paths through otherwise treacherous terrain. An elder pauses to mimic a particular call, 3 short whistles, followed by a warble, and waits. When a distant bird answers with the same sequence, the group adjusts course slightly westward. This isn't superstition. It's an ancient partnership. The birds know these people leave disturbed ground where insects thrive, and in return they act as living compasses. Noon finds us resting near a cliff face, where swifts nest by the thousands. The travelers watch the swirling mass of birds with intense focus, not just admiring the spectacle, but studying. The exact height of their flight patterns indicates changes in air pressure. The way they suddenly change direction in mass reveals wind shifts hours before they're felt at ground level. Someone produces a hollow bone and mimics the swifts, chirping. The echoes returning differently from various cliff surfaces create an auditory map of hidden crevices and caves. As afternoon fades, we enter a forest where the birdsong changes completely. Here, the travelers move with hands raised occasionally, fingers spread to catch the light just so. Watch how certain species only call when this dappled sunlight reaches particular intensities, living light meters marking the time until dusk. A child carefully places strands of grass in a dead tree's branches, not random decoration, but an invitation for owls to nest here next season and continue their role as night guides. Dusk brings the most extraordinary display yet. Flocks of starlings gather in murmurations that swirl across the darkening sky like living ink. The travelers don't just watch this display, they interact with it. Small mirrors made of polished stone catch the last light and reflect it upward in precise patterns. To our eyes it seems mere play, until we notice the birds responding, their shapes shifting to mirror the flashes from below. This is no accident but an ancient dialogue, the starlings' movements revealing weather patterns and predator locations through their evasive maneuvers. Night falls completely, but the avian guidance continues. An elder produces a small flute carved from a swan's wing bone and plays a series of haunting notes. Minutes pass, then an owl answers from the darkness, not a random call, but an exact echo of the flute's melody. The travelers nod knowingly. This particular owl only nests near certain medicinal plants they'll need tomorrow. Lying awake listening to the night birds chorus, you realize these people don't just observe nature, they participate in an endless conversation that began long before humans walked upright. Every chirp, every flutter, every feathered silhouette against the moon carries meaning to those who've learned to listen. As sleep finally takes you, your dreams fill with visions of flying high above the land, seeing paths and patterns invisible from the ground, understanding at last how the birds have always known the way, not just for themselves, but for all creatures wise enough to follow their lead. The sky remembers every wing bait, and now so do you. The first rays of dawn strike the valley floor like golden arrows, illuminating a path invisible in any other light. Our Stone Age companions stand motionless, watching as the sunlight creeps down the mountainside in precise patterns, revealing what they've been waiting for, the sun road. This isn't a physical trail, but a temporary pathway of light that appears only at this exact date, at this precise hour, for a handful of days each year. Today we walk where the sun itself shows us the way. As we step onto the sunlit path, notice how the travelers' shadows stretch behind us like compass needles. The eldest carries a notched stick, holding it at arm's length to measure how our shadows shrink as the sun climbs, not just telling time, but calculating how far we must travel before the light path fades at midday. Children run ahead, their small shadows pointing toward turns in the trail, still invisible to adult eyes, proof that the young often see what elders must measure. Mid-morning reveals the sun's true genius. The light now hits certain rock formations at perfect angles, causing them to cast shadows that don't just fall, they draw. That jagged outcrop projects a spear-straight dark line, pointing directly toward a distant pass. The striations in the cliff face create undulating shadows that mirror the river's bends ahead. Even the sparse vegetation plays its part. Silver-leafed plants turn to catch the light, forming shimmering arrows only visible from this solar perspective. Noon approaches and the sun road begins to fade, but the travelers anticipated this. As the direct light disappears, they shift to reading subtler clues, the way heat shimmers rise differently above various terrains, how certain stones retain morning warmth in telltale patterns, which insects emerge only when ground temperature reaches precise levels. Someone produces a polished piece of obsidian, angling it to create a tiny, intense spot of light that can ignite tinder ore. When moved slowly across a rock surface, reveal nearly invisible carvings left by previous travelers. As afternoon wanes, we reach a high plateau where the sun's angle works new magic. What appears as random scatterings of stones transforms into a perfect calendar when shadows lengthen. Certain rocks glow as if lit from within their crystalline structures, capturing and re-emitting sunlight in ethereal afterglow. The travelers arrange themselves in the center of this stone clock, their outstretched arms aligning with shadows to determine not just direction, but the exact number of walking days remaining until the next full moon. Dusk brings the most breathtaking navigation lesson. As the sun dips below the horizon, its final rays pass through a natural stone arch, projecting a shimmering oval of light that moves across the opposite cliff face. The travelers watch this luminous portal with quiet intensity. Where it touches when disappearing marks the location of tomorrow's first water source. Children try to catch the fading light in their hands, their laughter blending with the elders' satisfied murmurs. Another day's path, revealed in the sun's dying breath. Night falls, but the sun's guidance continues in unexpected ways. The travelers build a small fire not for warmth, but to study how its light interacts with the surrounding stones. Certain minerals within the rocks reflect back specific colors, flecks of copper making the flames burn green in places, veins of quartz creating prismatic flashes. Someone drops a handful of crushed herbs into the fire, and suddenly the smoke forms perfect vertical columns before bending sharply east. An atmospheric compass, pointing the way we'll travel at dawn. Lying awake beneath stars that seem to pulse in time with the fading embers, you realize these people don't just follow the sun, they dance with it. Each ray of light, each shadow, each degree of temperature change forms part of an endless conversation between earth and sky. As sleep finally takes you, your last conscious thought is that you'll never see sunlight the same way again, not just as illumination, but as the oldest map of all, drawn fresh each morning across the waiting land, patiently showing the way to those wise enough to read its golden language. The sun remembers every path it's ever lit, and now, so do you. A soft rain falls as we awaken beneath ancient oaks, their gnarled branches heavy with emerald cloaks of hanging moss. The air smells rich and damp, alive with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Our Stone Age companions rise with quiet purpose, their fingers already tracing the velvet textures of nearby tree trunks, not in admiration, but in navigation. Today we learn the final secret, how the smallest, most overlooked organisms remember paths that human minds forget. As we begin moving through the dripping forest, notice how the travelers constantly brush their fingertips against moss-covered surfaces. This isn't random contact, they're reading subtle variations in growth patterns that form nature's oldest living maps. The moss grows thickest on north-facing bark, its lush strands absorbing scarce sunlight in shadowed areas. But more miraculously, certain species only flourish along invisible mineral lines in the rock beneath natural signposts pointing to iron deposits, copper veins, and other vital resources. An elder pauses to peel back a small section of moss from a boulder, revealing faint spiral carvings beneath a message left centuries ago, preserved perfectly by nature's protective green blanket. Midday finds us in a part of the forest where the moss grows in strange geometric patterns. From ground level it appears random, but when the eldest climbs a leaning tree and looks down, a revelation emerges. The moss forms perfect arrows and circles, its growth manipulated generations ago by careful removal of certain sections. The travelers maintain these living signposts not with tools, but by applying mixtures of crushed bark and animal fats that encourage or inhibit growth in precise formations. Children practice this art on fallen logs, their small hands learning to shape living compasses that will outlast them by decades. As afternoon light filters through the canopy, the moss reveals its most astonishing secret. In certain clearings, the ground moss grows in waves that perfectly mirror the constellations above. Step into the center of these celestial gardens, and your shadow aligns with specific moss patterns to indicate nearby water sources, shelter caves, or medicinal plants. The travelers call these star fields, living astrolabes where heaven and earth meet in a carpet of green. Someone produces a deer antler and gently scrapes a new constellation into the moss, not destroying it, but guiding its future growth to mark a newly discovered spring. Dusk brings a change in the moss's behavior. As humidity rises, certain species emit faint phosphorescence, not the bright glow of fireflies, but a subtle shimmer visible only to dark-adapted eyes. The travelers move confidently along these glowing trails, their bare feet sensing minute temperature differences between moss types. One variety grows warmer when stepped on, retaining heat to mark emergency shelters. Another cools dramatically near underground streams, creating thermal waypoints in total darkness. Night falls completely, and the forest transforms into a living constellation map. The travelers move without torches, following barely visible moss glow that outlines safe paths. Occasionally someone stops to breathe on a particular patch, the sudden moisture causing bioluminescent spores to flare briefly brighter, revealing turns or hazards. A child laughs as they discover their own exhaled breath can write temporary messages in light across moss-covered stones. Lying awake beneath trees draped in glowing green veils, you realize these people don't just walk through the forest, they converse with it. The moss remembers every footstep, every careful touch, every traveler who ever paused to lean against its tree. And in return, it grows slowly, patiently into living maps that guide generations yet unborn. As sleep takes you, your fingers unconsciously trace moss patterns on the stone beneath you, your body already learning this ancient green language that needs no words, only time and attention and the quiet wisdom to listen. The moss remembers, the forest remembers, and now, in your deepest dreams, so do you. The first light of dawn doesn't wake us, the land itself does. A subtle vibration thrums through the earth, a resonance felt more than heard, as if the ground remembers the footsteps about to grace its surface once more. Our Stone Age companions rise with a quiet certainty, their hands pressed to the soil, listening to something beyond sound. Today we walk where countless feet have walked before, not following trails but joining a conversation that began millennia ago. As we begin moving, notice how the travelers' footsteps fall in perfect rhythm with some unseen cadence. Their bare feet find grooves worn smooth by generations of passage, not just visible paths, but the subconscious choices of optimal movement across the landscape. That slight detour around a seemingly clear area, the earth remembers it as unstable ground from 3 generations past. The extra steps toward that particular rock formation. An ancestral memory of predator ambushes lives in their muscle memory. The children walk with their arms outstretched, fingertips brushing vegetation, learning the land's memory through touch before sight. Mid-morning reveals the true wonder. We reach a stretch of land where no visible path exists. Yet the travelers move with sudden purpose. An elder kneels and scrapes away a thin layer of topsoil, revealing not dirt, but a compacted layer of crushed shells and charcoal. This is no natural formation, but the buried remnants of a path used when glaciers still licked at these valleys. The travelers walk this resurrected trail with quiet reverence, their weight reawakening minerals in the ancient paving that begin to hum faintly under pressure, a lithic memory of passage. Noon sunlight illuminates the most extraordinary sight, yet standing stones that appear randomly placed until the sun reaches its zenith. Then shadows connect them like dotted lines, forming perfect arrows pointing toward distant mountains. But the real magic happens when the travelers begin to chant not words, but tones that make the stones vibrate in response. Certain rocks emit low frequencies that ripple the surface of nearby water, creating interference patterns that map hidden underground streams. The eldest places their forehead against the central monolith, glistening, through bone conduction to vibrations that reveal fault lines and safe caves. As afternoon fades, we enter a forest where the trees themselves remember. Certain oaks bear spiral carvings made by long-ago hands, not decorations but growth directives. Over centuries, the trees have healed around these cuts, their grain now flowing in perfect alignment with celestial events. The travelers touch specific points on these living monuments, feeling for the subtle pulses of sap that quicken when constellations align. A child places their ear against the bark and gasps. The tree's hollows resonate with tones mirroring distant waterfalls, a natural hydrophone spanning miles. Dusk brings the day's most poignant lesson. We reach a simple circle of stones beside a creek, no monument, just a resting place worn smooth by generations of travelers. The eldest produces a pouch and scatters a fine powder into the shallow water. As the particles swirl, they collect along nearly invisible grooves carved into the creekbed, forming perfect spirals that mirror the stars above. This is no accident but a celestial map carved by patient hands over centuries, maintained by every traveler who ever paused here to clear debris from its channels. Night falls, but the land's memory grows sharper. The travelers build no fire tonight, instead they lie flat on the ancient path, feeling the residual warmth of sun-soaked stones beneath them. As the earth cools, it releases these memories as faint vibrations, the echo of bison herds that passed millennia ago, the whisper of forgotten floods, the indelible imprint of every foot that ever walked this way. Lying awake beneath stars that have witnessed countless such journeys, you realize these paths aren't just physical routes but temporal ones. Every step connects you to those who came before and those who will follow. The land remembers every traveler, every story, every moment of joy and sorrow played out upon its stage. As sleep finally takes you, your last conscious thought is that you're not just walking, you're adding your own small verse to an endless song the earth has been singing since time began. The path remembers, the stones remember, and now, in some indelible way, you do too. The pre-dawn air hums with a silence so deep it becomes its own kind of music. We wake to find our Stone Age companions already standing with faces upturned, eyes closed, drinking in the morning breeze like scholars deciphering sacred texts. Today we learn the wind's secret language, not just its direction, but its stories, warnings, and promises carried on currents older than human memory. As we begin walking, notice how the travelers constantly taste the wind, not metaphorically, but literally. Their tongues flick out occasionally to catch invisible particles, decoding messages in dust, pollen, and distant moisture. That faint metallic tang, iron deposits 3 valleys away. The sudden sweetness, a meadow of blooming medicinal herbs just over the next ridge. An elder plucks a single strand of hair and holds it aloft, not to check wind direction, but to observe how it vibrates at different frequencies, revealing turbulence patterns that predict afternoon storms. Mid-morning brings us to a high cliff where the wind behaves strangely. Instead of blowing straight, it curls into spirals that make the grass below dance, in perfect geometric patterns. The travelers spread out along the edge, each finding a different vantage point to study this aerial choreography. Someone produces a hollow bone flute and plays a series of notes. The wind carries some away completely, while others return distorted in ways that map unseen canyons and thermal currents below. Children take turns tossing feather bundles into the swirling updrafts. The way they rise and fall creates a 3-dimensional map of wind layers invisible to the eye. Noon finds us resting in a field where the wind has sculpted the grass into permanent waves. The travelers don't just walk through this golden ocean, they read it. The ripple patterns indicate prevailing wind directions from different seasons, while broken stems reveal recent animal movements. An elder rubs 2 stones together rhythmically, creating low-frequency vibrations that make nearby grass stems quiver in specific sequences. A primitive but effective method of sending messages across vast distances. As afternoon wanes, we reach the singing stones, a circle of tall rocks pierced with holes like ancient flutes. The travelers wait patiently until the shifting wind strikes the right angle, and suddenly the stones come alive with an eerie chorus. Each monolith produces a distinct tone that changes with the wind's speed and direction, not random noise, but a sophisticated weather forecasting system. The eldest interprets the harmonies, predicting not just approaching storms, but subtle pressure changes that affect animal behavior and plant growth for days ahead. Dusk transforms our wind lessons into something magical. The travelers build small fires at precise intervals, not for warmth, but to study how smoke interacts with the evening breeze. Certain herbs added to the flames make the smoke rise in straight columns before bending abruptly at altitude, revealing wind shear layers that indicate tomorrow's travel conditions. Someone releases a handful of milkweed, seeds that catch the fading light as they rise. Their swirling dance maps atmospheric eddies that will influence our path at dawn. Night falls with a wind that carries the scent of distant rain. The travelers lie in a circle with heads pointed inward, each person reporting subtle changes in the breeze across their exposed skin. The temperature differences between left and right cheeks indicate wind direction shifts. The varying humidity detected by nostrils predicts precipitation timing. Even the way body hair stirs provides data about coming weather patterns. Lying awake beneath stars that pulse like distant campfires, you realize these people don't just observe the wind, they participate in an ancient dialogue. Every gust carries wisdom, every breeze tells stories, every silent moment between winds speaks volumes. As sleep finally takes you, your skin remains alert to the night's whispers, your subconscious already learning this language older than words. The wind remembers every path it's ever traveled, every mountain it's ever crossed, every voice it's ever carried. And now, in some profound way, it remembers you too. The first light of dawn shatters into 1,000 liquid diamonds as we stand knee-deep in the river's slow current. Our Stone Age companions move deliberately, not fighting the water's flow but listening to its ancient stories. Today we learn that rivers aren't just obstacles or resources, they're living libraries whose currents carry memories of every footstep, every storm, every creature that ever drank from their waters. As we wade upstream, notice how the travelers read the river's surface like a vast, ever-changing manuscript. That subtle dimple in the water's skin, a school of fish moving towards spawning grounds, the barely visible line of foam drifting at an angle, an underwater current marking the safest crossing point. The eldest kneels and cups water in both hands, letting it drain slowly while watching how individual droplets cling to skin in distinct patterns, each configuration revealing mineral content that indicates what landscapes the river has passed through before reaching us. Mid-morning brings us to a place where the river widens into a mirror-like pool. The travelers don't simply drink here, they commune. Small offerings are placed in the shallows, a perfectly round pebble, a feather tied with grass, a carved berry. Watch how these objects drift not randomly, but along precise paths that reveal the pool's hidden geometry. A child giggles as she follows a floating leaf's journey, unknowingly tracing the same route marked on cave paintings found miles upstream. This is how river knowledge passes between generations, not through maps, but through play that encodes vital information in memory and muscle. Noon sunlight transforms the river into a liquid sundial. The travelers stand motionless in waist-deep water, observing how their shadows interact with the rippling bottom. Certain rock formations only align with human shadows at this exact time of year, creating temporary markers that indicate when to harvest fish or when to move to higher ground. Someone produces a hollow reed and blows across its opening. The resulting sound changes pitch depending on how much is submerged, creating an acoustic depth gauge perfected over generations. As afternoon wanes, we reach rapids where the river's voice grows loud. The travelers don't just hear this noise, they decipher it. That low, rhythmic thumping. Large boulders shifting in the current, indicating dangerous instability. The higher-pitched gurgling, a constriction where the water speeds up, marking the best fishing spot. An elder places both hands on a riverside stone and lowers his head until his ear touches the surface. The vibrations conducting through rock tell him more about upcoming conditions than his eyes ever could. Dusk works magic on the water's surface. The fading light reveals subtle temperature variations where springs feed into the main current, invisible during day, but now glowing with faint mist. The travelers collect water from these hidden junctions, each source possessing distinct mineral flavors that serve as natural signposts. Someone drops a series of leaves at regular intervals. Their varying spin rates create a liquid map of currents that will remain accurate for days. Nightfall doesn't stop the river's lessons. By moonlight, certain fish rise to create silvery rings that expand in perfect circles, their centers marking submerged landmarks. The travelers wade carefully, feeling how the water's texture changes around their legs, silkier near sandy bottoms, pricklier where volcanic rock hides beneath. Occasionally, someone claps sharply and listens to the echoes return off the water, a primitive but effective sonar mapping the river's depth and shape. Lying awake beside this eternal flow, you realize these people don't just use the river, they exist in continuous dialogue with it. Every ripple carries meaning, every current tells a story, every drop holds memories of mountains it's eroded and civilizations it's nourished. As sleep takes you, your dreams flow with the water's endless journey, not just following the river's path, but understanding how you've always been part of its story. The water remembers every stone it's ever touched, every bank it's ever shaped, every traveler it's ever carried. And now, in the quiet of your sleeping mind, it remembers you too. The first light of dawn creeps across the valley like a shy creature, revealing a landscape littered with stones of every size and shape. Our Stone Age companions move among them with quiet reverence, their fingertips brushing surfaces as if reading some ancient braille. These aren't just rocks, they're the Earth's oldest storytellers, each one holding memories older than human civilization. Today we learn to listen to their silent language. As we walk, notice how the traveler's bare feet instinctively find the smoothest stones not by sight, but by feel. The most worn rocks form invisible pathways, their surfaces polished by generations of passing feet. An elder pauses to press both palms against a large boulder, then motions for others to do the same. Close your eyes, and you'll feel it too, a faint vibration humming through the stone, the accumulated memory of countless earthquakes, storms and seasons pulsing just beneath your touch. Mid-morning brings us to a field of scattered stones that seem randomly placed until the sun climbs high enough to reveal their secret. Watch how the travelers position themselves so the stone's shadows intersect at precise angles, creating temporary lines that point toward distant landmarks. A child giggles as she jumps from shadow to shadow, unknowingly following the same path her ancestors walked centuries ago. Someone produces a round stone and rolls it gently across the ground. Its path curves unnaturally, pulled by subtle magnetic forces that reveal underground iron deposits. Noon transforms our rocky landscape into a giant sundial. The travelers gather around a peculiar flat stone covered in shallow depressions. As sunlight strikes at exactly 90 degrees, watch how they fill these cups with water. The liquid doesn't pool, but flows along nearly invisible channels, tracing patterns that mirror constellations only visible at certain times of year. This isn't just art, it's a three-dimensional calendar and compass fused into stone. As afternoon shadows lengthen, the stones begin to speak in unexpected ways. That cluster of basalt columns hums when wind passes through them at this exact angle, a natural warning system for approaching storms. The flint-rich outcropping sparks when struck just so, its different tones indicating the best material for tools. The eldest traveler kneels beside a seemingly ordinary rock and breathes on it suddenly. Faint carvings emerge in the condensation, directions left by someone millennia ago, visible only under these precise conditions. Dusk works its magic on the stones. Some begin to radiate stored warmth, creating thermal markers in the growing coolness. Others develop a faint electric charge that makes arm hairs stand on end when approached, nature's warning system for unstable ground. The travelers move among them with quiet confidence, reading these subtle cues as clearly as modern hikers might follow painted trail markers. Night falls, but the stone's guidance continues. Moonlight strikes certain mineral veins, making them glow faintly blue, a network of luminous pathways visible only after dark. The travelers place their foreheads against cool rock faces, listening through bone conduction to vibrations that reveal distant waterfalls or animal movements. Someone taps two stones together rhythmically, the echoes returning differently from various rock types create an auditory map of the surrounding terrain. Lying awake beneath stars that have witnessed countless such nights, you realize these people don't just walk among stones, they commune with them. Every pebble, every boulder, every cliff face holds memories of every footstep, every storm, every moment of beauty or danger it's ever witnessed. As sleep finally takes you, your fingers unconsciously trace the contours of the stone. Beneath you, your body already learning this ancient lithic language that needs no words, only time and patience and quiet attention. The stones remember every traveler who ever passed this way. And now, in some profound way, they'll remember you too. The first light of dawn reveals a landscape veiled in mist, the air heavy with the scent of damp soil and waking vegetation. Our Stone Age companions stand motionless, their bare feet buried in the cool earth, their chests rising and falling in unison with some unseen rhythm. Today we learn the most subtle navigation of all, not by stars or stones, but by breathing with the land itself. As we begin walking, notice how the travelers synchronize their steps with the very pulse of the earth. Their feet lift and fall not at random, but in time with distant underground water flows they somehow sense through the soles of their feet. The eldest pauses occasionally to press an ear to the ground, not listening for sounds, but feeling the faint vibrations that reveal animal trails, buried streams, and unstable terrain long before they're visible. Mid-morning brings us to a meadow, where the grass grows in peculiar swirling patterns. The travelers don't observe these designs, they interact with them. Someone produces a hollow bone and blows across its opening, creating a tone that makes nearby grass stems vibrate in distinct sequences. Another walks barefoot in widening circles, feeling for subtle temperature changes that indicate ancient fire pits or buried stones. The land here remembers every camp, every gathering, every story told around long cold fires, and now it shares those memories through touch and sound. Noon sunlight transforms the earth into a living map. The travelers kneel and run their hands through the topsoil, reading its composition like scholars deciphering scrolls. Certain mineral sparkles indicate proximity to flint deposits. The way ants move their nests reveals underground water channels. Even the angle at which fallen leaves decompose serves as a compass, their breakdown patterns affected by consistent wind and sun exposure. A child laughs as she tosses handfuls of dust into the air. The particles catch the light differently depending on mineral content, creating a shimmering map of the valley's geological history. As afternoon wanes, we reach a place where the very air changes character. The travelers spread out, each inhaling deeply and reporting subtle variations in scent and humidity. That faint tang of iron, an exposed deposit of ore ahead, the sudden earthy richness, a buried peat bog perfect for preserving food. Someone digs a shallow hole and lies with their face over it. The gases rising from decaying vegetation reveal soil health and what plants will thrive there. Dusk brings the day's most profound lesson. The travelers sit in a circle and begin breathing in unison, slow, measured inhalations through the nose, long exhales through slightly pursed lips. As their rhythms synchronize, something remarkable happens. The very mist around them begins to move differently, swirling in patterns that align with underground features. The land is breathing with them, its exhalations visible in the evening air. Night falls, but the lessons continue. The travelers lie on their backs, feeling the earth's warmth slowly radiating back to the stars. Each places a hand on their chest, and one on the ground, synchronizing heartbeat with the planet's deep, slow rhythms. Occasionally someone sits up suddenly, sensing through some primal instinct where the next day's path begins. Lying awake beneath stars reflected in 1,000 dew droplets, you realize these people don't just walk upon the land, they exist in continuous dialogue with it. Every breath carries meaning, every exhalation receives an answer. Every heartbeat echoes the earth's own pulse. As sleep takes you, your breathing slows to match the land's nocturnal rhythm, in and out, rise and fall. An ancient call and response that began when the first human drew breath and will continue long after. The earth remembers every creature that ever walked its surface. And tonight, in the quiet language of shared breath, it remembers you.